podcast where we focus on helping you claim what's rightfully yours, your health and your freedom. We explore the three main areas of health: the physical realm, the biochemical realm, and the mental and emotional realm. We also explore all the areas of lifestyle we can find that will help you live more abundantly, regardless of where you're starting. And remember, in life, you'll either make excuses or create results. You choose. I'm your host, Dr. Josh Hant, and I'm glad to be with you here today. Make sure to head on down to the show notes and click on the link to join our tribe of human-powered life heroes, where we'll update you on new shows, events, product launches, and so much more. Now, it's time to enjoy the show. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Human Powered Life Podcast. We have an amazing guest today. We're going to talk about food. We're going to talk about being healthy, right? This is Dr. Pete Patitsas. Welcome, brother. Glad to have you here.
Hey, Dr. Josh, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here and really passionate about the topic that we're going to be exploring today.
Yeah, and I have just your, on the side of my screen here, I have your website open, and I have I'm getting hungry looking at it. So I don't even know what it is, but it's an avocado with some kind of maybe pesto or something.
Yeah.
I'm just staring at it and getting hungry here. So
it sort of resonates with our theme of sort of plant-based protein, which I think is gaining traction, worldwide, either by necessity or by design. But one of the big pillars of what we do is promote the consumption of plants and a lot of protein at that. And there's a lot to be said about that source of protein too. So yeah, the website sort of highlights that. I thought it was a pretty colorful photo.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. So let's dive into your story. So many of us are the same in this natural health world, which also makes it easy to connect, and it makes it easy for us to share our stories and our experience with other people. So give everybody, you're a medical doctor.
Yes.
Have an MBA as well, or at least you probably spent way too much time in school, and you're in this natural health world. When I see the letters MD, and I know you're a practicing physician, I'm thinking like the emergency medicine, all of these things, but you're connecting dots for people. So you're there for their emergency care, right?
Yes.
Type of thing, but you're also there to help promote their health. So share your story with them.
Yeah, I mean, so much of my story is kind of existential. I kind of grew up with the idea that if you weren't happy every day at work, you picked the wrong career path. And to some extent, I think there's a lot of value in finding sort of that sensation of happiness in the daily work that you do. But the reality is that a lot of nonprofit, exciting, meaningful work doesn't pay very well. And then at the same time, a lot of work that is not so meaningful pays very well. And then never mind the fact that sometimes when you hit the ladder, there's only so many lottery winners that sort of make much money at all. The reason I start out with that point is that to some extent for me, preventative medicine and lifestyle and holistic approach seem to be truly like a meaningful path to wholeness, to wellness. But at the same time was very difficult, at least in the way that we have it structured in America, to make a living out of. I think that's kind of by design. I mean, there's no reason why I in the emergency department should be able to charge $100 for a Tylenol, but someone who sits down with a functional medicine doctor, or let's call it just a physical therapist, let's say, that's bringing someone through an hour worth of therapy and talking with them and guiding them, isn't paid a similar amount. So, there's something in the system itself, I think, that's incentivizing, the wrong outcome and the wrong incentives for people to train and to get the right training that they need to help people the most. So in any case, I grew up in central Pennsylvania, and I've always had an interest in athletics since a kid. I was a pretty active soccer player, although I was benched constantly. I became captain of my team, but it was purely based on charisma, nothing to do with skill. But what I did see, though, was that discipline and that exercise was very beneficial to me as a youth. I eventually found myself playing rugby, and I actually went on eventually to play for rugby's the national team of Greece and their rugby team, which I really enjoyed. So for all those ruggers listening to to the podcast, I was a second row, a rugby player, and those guys do a lot of, tackling and moving. But point is that, I kind of found myself, and all the while just seemed to have a really strong emphasis on my own health, and really saw that blossom as I went through college and started to play more, competitively. At the same time, my father was an eye surgeon and came from sort of that MD allopathic background. He himself sort of had years where he had good health, years where he didn't have good health. I grew up eating all the wrong crap. I mean, it was a lot of trans fat, margarine, and candies and white bread, etc. And so, in a certain sense, medicine as a lifestyle through food didn't really become a sense of a part of who I was till probably after college. And it was, I would say, a combination of like Netflix films, trying to be the biggest and baddest on the rugby field, etc. And I found that a lot of the information I was getting was just kind of from, social groups, Netflix films, and my own research, and not from, the mainstream community. My doctor, growing up was frankly speaking obese, and he was eating all the wrong stuff all day long as he saw patients. Not to say he wasn't doing good work. It's just that, he wasn't, you're not going to get information about preventative medicine from people, I think, that aren't, walking the talk. I bring this up just to say that, there's a lot of good information out there for those people motivated to find it. And I would say that in the last few years, especially, because I finished college in 2007, in the last years especially, now it's even more easy, and we're more organized and coordinated and sophisticated online to keep each other all in check. What's frustrating for me as a doctor, just to kind of put it back on the patient for a second, is a lot of people don't, I'm going to repeat this again, they do not want to make the lifestyle changes, and what I think is so exciting about the field of chiropractic or acupuncture or massage therapy, physical therapy even, a lot of people who are showing up there kind of self-select, and they self-filter themselves to be like very motivated, exciting people. And so I actually, before going to medical school, actually owned a chiropractic center. I worked out of Bellefonte, Pennsylvania with a chiropractor. We had 3 massage therapists and acupuncturists. And every once in a while we'd sell, some nutritional stuff too. But that was like my cup of tea. But it was very difficult in the central Pennsylvania healthcare climate to make a living doing that. But in general, though, it was like a super exciting place to work. Everyone was motivated. Everyone was excited. We all kind of worked together to common goals. People lost weight. People got rid of chronic pain. I mean, it was great. But as soon as I kind of left that network of patients and people, it just seemed like the rest of the world wasn't really fundamentally interested in putting in the work it would take to make lifestyle changes. And I found that very frustrating. So in any case, I eventually went to medical school because I wanted to be on the other side of the table. I didn't want to just be a business person in health and wellness. I wanted to be a doctor in it, really about patient care. And I thought that becoming a medical doctor would allow me to kind of be respected across the aisle, so to speak, to all those patients who weren't coming to my wellness center years earlier. And then I could speak to them on their level. What I found in the process of going through medical school was, again, that frustrating piece, which is a lot of people don't want to put in the work. And I'm not trying to say it's an easy thing. I always found it interesting that like 30% of people that attend AA meetings actually stay sober. So, I mean, this food and alcohol and drugs, they're all very related in a certain sense. It's actually the same pathway neurologically. And so it's an addiction. It's an addiction. And people are doing the best they can. But for me as a doc, I like to be in the emergency department helping people kind of instantaneously. And then in my own time, like once I leave the office, so to speak, the emergency department, to be able to really put together a preventative medicine strategy with motivated people and slowly offer something to my own patients. So it's kind of, like I said, a lot of it sort of started with my interests, my background, trying to get the best bang for my buck, and at the same time trying to find meaningful work and also work that would allow me to live a wonderful lifestyle. But heck, man, if I could just literally pick anything and make a good living at it, I'd probably be like a massage therapist. I mean, I would just, I would chat with people about their lives as I'm trying to work out their musculature, and and, just call it a day. But it's just not that the system is not set up in that way.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. In our practice in New York City, we have we as we go through care, if you will, with patients, initial care, we let them know there are options and share, and they get to decide really how they want to play. And we talk about people that are very crisis motivated, which is the vast majority, versus people that are lifestyle motivated, excuse me. So we, in our practice, what's interesting is people start to go through our crisis care phase. It's, you've probably heard of the term titration in chemistry, like dropping like the water in, and for those who know what that means, if you remember being back in school, you're dropping like a clear liquid into another clear liquid, and it eventually turns blue or green or red or whatever that magic, right? That color is. So with titration and teaching people and encouraging people, empowering people, for the vast majority of our practice, and I think people that get exposed, like you said, to these healthier ways, if they're crisis motivated, with enough titration, they get it. And then they make the choice. Okay, now I'm lifestyle motivated. I'm going to do the things that are good for me. I'm not going to do the things that I've always done, which have got me all the same results, which have put me in emergency rooms, which have put me in surgeries or chronically ill and sick all the time. So, I think that's what you're doing. You're meeting people in a place now of work, but you've also created this vast knowledge of nutrition and the history behind a lot of the nutrition, which is very cool to bring people in. And I think, like you said, it's a lot of fun when we get into that lifestyle motivation versus there's nothing wrong with the crisis part of it. They need that as well. But most people only act on that part and then just wait for the next one to show up.
Yeah. And it's tough, right? Because we live in a civilization that's just very foreign to tragedy and some of those sober realities. I mean, even, and again, I'm not trying to be political, but let's just say that the most powerful man on earth is very old, like literally just too old. I'm not going to be 100% on all cylinders at that age. We all have to have a certain sobriety to the limitations of our human capacity. And I see that played out every day in the emergency department. For me, it motivates me to take my health very seriously because I see how frail it is. But for a lot of people, and I think that aren't in healthcare and not, dealing with patients on a regular basis, you can very easily ignore that and sort of like coast through life, kind of getting away with using, escalators and subways and, seeing your kids through Zoom and not picking them up. And we live in a very civilized society where physicality can be completely ignored. And as a result, you can get away with a lot and never kind of understand, oh my gosh, I'm huffing and puffing, just like lifting up my 20-pound toddler, like something's wrong,
Yeah, this is totally true. So let's fast forward. Now you're practicing, have become an author. You've studied up the wazoo as far as natural health goes, nutrition goes, the Athos diet. Can you describe a little bit about, where did that really come into play for you? Like, I want to write a book. Like, did you just wake up one morning and be like, I'm going to write a book? Like, that's not an easy thing to say I want to do.
No, sure. Just like many things, it was part of an exploration of my own identity to some extent too. So I'm Greek American. I could get citizenship in Greece if I wanted, but I don't want to serve in the military. So I'm just going to be a tourist until 40, and then I'll apply, which is just in like 2 years. But a point though is that as a Greek and most likely Orthodox, if you had to roll the dice, you're dealing with a Greek Orthodox Christian. We have a very strong religious tradition that utilizes the practice of fasting. And it's pretty extreme by most measures. I mean, if I were to tell you that since 7, I've been a vegan for half the year, a lot of people would be like, oh my God, did you suffer as a child? Did you stunt your growth? I'm like, no way. No, I didn't do any of that. And by the way, most people in the world don't have access to, meat anyway, on a daily basis like we do in the US. So I just always find it funny that there's sort of like an ancient, let's call it an evolutionary baseline, which is like most human beings are truly omnivores almost by necessity, and as a result, our bodies are made for both kinds of food. And so me sort of practicing fasting in this sort of vegan way, it's not deprivation, it's actually restoring me to a more natural state with that seasonality of the food that I eat and consume. And so since 7, I've been doing that. But the problem is just like anything, as you as you move away from sort of the core of the tradition, you start to water it down and lose it. So what I mean by that is I was following all the parameters of no meat, no dairy, but I was eating all the wrong crap. I mean, I was 7 through, like I said, that transformation during college years, trying to explore nutrition and exercise. And I was eating trans fat that was in margarine. I was eating a lot of white bread, all the candy I wanted. Like, oh, I'm fasting, I'm following the rules, no big deal. And there was some discipline in that because, as a 7-year-old and all your friends bringing cupcakes, that can be difficult to say no to. But at the same time, though, like I had this capacity for discipline. I just need to use it in a more optimal way for my health. And so there's like 210 to maybe 300 million Orthodox Christians out there. And this book is kind of written like as a flagship in a certain sense for them to finally wake up and get return on investment for half a year's worth of fasting throughout the year where they become vegans. And as I explored that in medical school, and I kind of knew, where to look up literature research and how to read research in the first place, I started to find out that the par excellence of this tradition is in a region of Greece called Mt Athos, which is a community of 23 monasteries. And it's like Narnia, man. I've been there. I mean, it is literally like stone castles, huge vistas, no caution signs, no railings, at your own risk. And people go there actually with an extra visa and permission from the capital. It's the oldest surviving government in the world. And it's just like this little region of Greece that like not many people know about. It is a UNESCO site. And if you can go online and like type in drone to Mount Athos, I mean, like I said, it's an adventurous paradise. I mean, just beautiful green areas, castle-like structures, and people who look, frankly speaking, like Gandalf. I mean, it's like Lord of the Rings in real life. And so what's weird and fascinating is that this group of monasteries pride themselves by not interacting with the rest of the world. You have to come to them. But nevertheless, they have been outliving Greeks themselves, who already have, through the Mediterranean diet, a high life expectancy for centuries. Some of these monks have been living to 90s and 100 easily as they have practiced their ascetical practices. And the strongest practice that they utilize in their day is one of fasting. And so as I teased out the practices of these monks where they intermittent fast, and I'll tell you why that's so mind-blowing, where they eat plant-based protein primarily, and where they just walk, they are living into ripe old age and are very lucid, have their health very functional, and they live long, good lives. And I'm sure like being at the top of 1,000-foot cliff and breathing in fresh air and seeing the Mediterranean helps too. But it really is a beautiful and mystical place, which is very foreign to our society, because I think that a lot of things in the US are kind of the opposite spectrum. We're very calculated. Things are more functional on the side. Beauty's not the highest good. This is a very different place. So as I started to look at what these monks were doing, and then I said, you know what, I'm going to get this 180 plus days of fasting for my own personal self in line. Like all the weight started coming off. The energy increased. My sleep improved. I started to actually lose weight during the fasting periods instead of like actually kind of gaining it and feeling softer. So in any case, that self-exploration and trying to get good return on investment of what I was doing already kind of led me into doing medical research and literature research on this practice itself. And then I lived it. And once I lost like literally 35 pounds in 48 days a number of years ago, I knew I was onto something, and I had an opportunity to write like a thesis in medical school, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to spend the next 6 weeks like just diving into the research. And so I probably put in, I don't know, probably 500 hours of research into this topic, and I didn't have time to do anything with it in residency because I was a slave to the emergency medicine system. But I learned a lot. But it was tough. And once I finished and became an attending, I was like, you know what, I got some time and I'm going to write a book, and we're going to share with my fellow comrades worldwide. But also, I think it's worthy to push out to the rest of the world, because we need this so much, especially in America, where obesity is so rampant and diabetes is so rampant. And that's how the Athos diet was created. Like I said, starting out with self-exploration, testing it out with the literature, and then testing it out personally. And the book came after that.
Hey, we're giving you a short break here where you can head down to the show notes or lifestylelocker.com and join our tribe of human-powered life heroes. You'll be the first to know about new shows, events, product launches, affiliate specials, and more. And now, back to the show.
We couldn't quite validate it till recently in terms of modern human history, but somehow cultures around the world picked up this practice of fasting and ran with it. And the reason that it stuck was because in reality, it is a powerful tool for health, an incredible biohack. And there's many types of fasting. So one, because fasting is, like you said, there's a word there that sort of has a spectrum of definitions. Yeah. So in the most purest sense, you're absolutely right. It is no eating anything at all, period. And you might say that those people that do that, popularly or are right now doing fasting for Ramadan, nothing to eat between sundown and sunset. And, I can't speak to their full tradition, but basically it's over a month of intermittent fasting practices, no food at all. I don't think they can drink water either.
I don't think so either.
Yeah. The other form of fasting is more just caloric deficit. Hey, I'm going to cut down on what I'm eating. I'm going to show a little bit more restraint. And then finally, it's sort of food-based. I'm going to eliminate certain types of food. And then there are various combinations of all three. But in the Greek Orthodox tradition, where we've been doing this for quite a while, they practice fasting on Wednesdays, on Fridays, and then throughout the year, like 7 weeks before Easter, 6 weeks or so before Christmas, and several weeks here and there throughout the summer months. And so it's sporadic and it's seasonal, which I think there's some wisdom in that. You'll run yourself into the ground if you just were to do 180 days all in a row. And so it has some cyclicality to it.
Yeah. So those Wednesdays, just to pause for a second, those Wednesday, Fridays that are going throughout the year, is that we'll say a traditional fast, no food, no water, no nothing, or is that you're switching from an omnivore to a
So what I would say is if you were asking me what is the setup when I was a kid, I would tell you, oh, that means I don't eat any meat, any dairy, nothing with an ingredient with that. And I was like, that's it. Nothing else. That's all I have to do, mom and dad. So can I please eat this piece of white bread and candy or whatever? And like, sure, son, have as much as you like, and feel good about that. And then, I'm a husky little kid, running around trying to catch up with the rest of the kids. So that's what I would tell you then. What I've realized in the process of doing this literature review is that if you try to really do par excellence Orthodox fasting, it includes plant-based protein and very unrefined, unprocessed foods. So kind of an elimination diet in a sense. But then the second is you don't eat until 3 o'clock. Okay. You don't eat until 3 o'clock. And what I've translated that into is intermittent fasting. I mean,
sounds like it.
300 years ago, you said, "Oh, what are you doing?" Well, I'm doing the Orthodox tradition of not eating till 3 o'clock, and that's what I do. But in the 21st century, we say no, intermittent fasting. And so what ends up happening is these monks on Mt Athosis only eat several hours a day. And of course they don't call it intermittent fasting. They just think it's my religious practice. And there's certain poetic and beautiful reasons for that. But in any case, so what I did then was say, hey, why don't I take this, fasting practice where people are living longer as a result, bring it to modern human civilization and promote it. And so what I have done personally, and this is what the Athos diet encourages, is you don't eat for 16 to 20 hours a day. Or we could say the opposite. You only eat for 4 to 8 hours a day. 4 to 8 hours a day. So you got the intermittent fasting part, which mimics this practice in Mt Athosis. And then the second pillar is getting plant-based protein. Now, the reality is you could probably do the diet with meat if you wanted to, and you just up the protein and lower your carbs, because there's there's two parameters I set on that. Is I try to get people not to eat more than 140 grams of carbohydrate a day, and then they have to eat at least 100 grams of protein a day. Have as much fat as you want. So, there's sort of a ketosis aspect there, and we can talk about what that is if you like, but there's this high protein aspect to the diet, but we prefer to get it through plants. And I think there's some historical reasons for that, and there's a lot of scientific research for that. Did you ever watch the Netflix maybe it's not on Netflix, Amazon Prime, Game Changers?
Huh?
Have you watched that? I mean, these guys, right where I thought I was pitying myself about performance and functionality, you watch this thing, you're like, wow, there's some pretty strong, fast people out there who are athletes on a vegan diet, and they're doing great. So in any case, I try to get these, my patients to consume protein from a plant-based source. And then finally, I like to just remind people that walking is the best exercise out there overall for all ages, all demographics. It's kind of a universal. It's historic. And you don't need necessarily to do CrossFit or marathons even, although you could. It's just that I like to reassure people that they don't have to overdo it. They get their diet in place, they do something as simple as walking. They can do more, but if they at least do 30 minutes of walking a day, they have the Athos diet recipe, and they optimize this quote unquote fasting practice throughout the year. They lose a lot of weight, and they get a lot of physiological benefit from it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you just personally as an ultra marathoner, we spoke about like being like a hunter gatherer, like an omnivore.
Yes.
That's been my whole life, right? Like brought up in the US, like that's just the way we ate. And as I started to, I've read so many books on running, on a lot of these like athletes that are like beyond crazy, if you will, but very, very focused and very, they can predict their results, like how they're going to feel after a 100-mile run, or, all of these things. And then I read a book, and it was actually about something about heroes. I can't remember what it's called. It was written by the author of Born to Run.
Okay.
I think it's Chris McDougall, and he talked about a lot of these Greek athletes that were eating like what in the US we would call a weed, like in the yard, but they're so nutrient dense and all this. So I started to do all of this research, and I became like during race season, from a month or 2 or 3 months out, depending on the type of run, I'll become like probably 90% plant or vegetable based.
Yes.
And I can go to work on a Monday if I run a 50-mile race on Sunday, and nobody would have any idea I ran 50 miles.
Incredible. Yeah. I think that weed you're talking about is called horta.
That might be that one. Is it or purslane or something like that?
Yeah. I'm not sure actually what it actually is in the US, but if you go to any Greek restaurant in Greece, you can say, I want some horta, and it's like the best fiber, very filling, lots of lemon. Okay. It's basically a weed. I mean, it's the funniest thing, but it's like, give me all that cutted weeds in your backyard there.
Yeah, well, we actually think of growing, planting some is called purslane. Is like it's a very bitter,
yes,
like weird, but it's like it's so nutrient dense. It's awesome. It's very slimy, weird if you blend it up, but it's the flavors like if you like arugula, it's awesome.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. Wow. Okay. So you came across, and this was in the practice of you being a part of this ultra marathon network of people, and
learning that, a lot of these, some people do carnivore and do it right. But like I found me personally, when I would shift primarily over to like, whether it was like a Greek or even like these Mexican tribal people, I would eat those types of foods that are like ancient.
Yes.
I would do it for long periods of time. My endurance was good. I would shed weight, which I probably will, because for me personally, I'm heavy for ultra distance right now, but I shed weight when I do that, like instantaneously. It's all, I'm sure it's all inflammation and other crap that's just stuck in the system.
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting you bring that up. I mean, I think that, again, there's this almost like test of time in these cultures, where if you don't have the antibiotics and you don't have the cath lab and you don't have liposuction and surgery, what can we do to keep ourselves in good health? And it just kind of makes sense that it doesn't make sense. It's kind of suggested that through lifestyle and prevention, we can get people to where they need to be, so they don't ever need the medicines in the first place. I think the disconnect comes in the US healthcare system is that, like I said, not no one wants, but we don't emphasize enough that this takes a lifestyle change, a cultural shift. And there needs to be some ritual around that,
Yeah.
some poetry behind it, so to speak. And that way we create a culture that's healthy. I mean, I think it's crazy that in the US, the most, arguably wealthy country in the world, with all of its technology and all of its convenience, has some of the sickest people in the world. And part of that is because we can get away with it, right? I mean, if we didn't have all the medications we had and all the surgeries we had and all the resources, we wouldn't be able to keep grandma and grandpa and mom and dad alive. I mean, literally that, but at the same time, I don't understand why in our waiting rooms in the emergency department, where during COVID times, people were waiting 24 hours in the ED. It was really difficult, this past winter, especially. But, why aren't we playing in our emergency departments, like documentaries on prevention, instead of like just playing infomercials on BS, like all hour long. And it's so funny because I've actually made these recommendations. I'm like, these patients have nothing else to do except sit there and wait. Why don't we at least educate them, in some meaningful way, versus just playing my 600-pound life, which is actually was playing in one of the emergency departments I was in. And I don't think the goal of that show is to lose weight. I think they just show people,
that they can survive at 600 pounds.
Yeah. And it just was such an irony. Like, here in the emergency department, people are dying, and we're like glorifying this commercialized, zero information.
That makes so much sense.
Oh my God, but again, people show up to the ED and it's too late. The calculation has been completed at that point, and I can't tell a diabetic at that point, like, hey, you're in diabetic ketoacidosis. You're hours away from probably going to a coma if we don't do something right now. However, once we get you stabilized, like, by all means, let's get you on the right lifestyle for full health. But it's just, the urgency of that conversation is so extreme, and we don't have, it's such an urgent situation that we don't have the time to really break it down, in the emergency department. So it's a missed opportunity, because that's when they're the most frail and perhaps most motivated to make a change. But we literally just don't have the time. We don't have the time to tell them about what's going on.
Yeah, no, I have friends, family, people that have had, heart conditions, and like, we'll say a heart attack or something, some kind of heart thing going on. It could be life-threatening for the most part. And they'll, oh my God, thank God, went to the emergency room, blah, blah, blah. They saved me. And then the first thing they'll want to do after is go get a slice of pizza or something. I'm like, time out. Like, hold on. Really? Like, what's the thought process? And I think that you said, like, we have such a deep connection to food, as a society all around the world. And, we get addicted to certain things, obviously, and I think that's what they call food science, right? Like, we have, food science, that, we have this thing called the FDA in the US. It's like, we give you really bad food, then we throw you on drugs for a lifetime, and we just get this never-ending cycle. It just keeps going on. So I urge everybody to definitely get this book. I'll tell you what, it's an easy book to go through. It's simple, and you have, which is so cool in here, I'm just going to flip to it now. You have, like, the plan, and for those that are going to watch this, you'll see I'm just holding it up, and it's like, literally, you can take your pen or pencil and write in the book.
Yes.
And just go through your 48 days, and just go through the process. And I tell you what, if you track things, you can create success in your life, whether it's business or losing 5 pounds or gaining 5 pounds of muscle, right? Like, it's all trackable, and it's all doable, and it's a lot easier if you know what the direction you're going in. Would you agree?
We wanted to make the book very actionable, and just like kind of an emergency medicine, we just wanted people to read it, understand to the extent that they need to get to know that this is good science, and then to just start tomorrow. And support them through that 48 days. Because in the process of the diet, you first and foremost, it's such a paradigm shift. I mean, you're telling people you're not eating for most hours of the day, which is completely opposite to our 24/7 culture, right?
Exactly.
We can shop every day of the week, every hour of the day. We can, it's so constant. That's our culture. And that is what we're undoing through this intermittent fasting practice, which is a paradigm shift. And then second, we're asking people to do plant-based, which again, in the US, it's kind of like, well, plant-based. I mean, what about all the meat? Aren't we supposed to be as big as bad as we can possibly be by eating all this steak? And the reality is that, I'm not opposed to meat at all, but most of us are not going to be professional bodybuilders, NFL football players. Those people are lottery winners, not just for ability, but also free from some injuries. It's like so much goes into, I'd almost call it 99% work ethic and 1% destiny. It's not luck at all. It's like providence that you end up on these teams, and there are probably another 1,000 people that could have been on that team that got injured. Life just didn't go that way. Like they had all the abilities, but it didn't work out. So I just try to say that to some extent, I feel like the US has to stop marketing this like Nike culture of we're all going to be superstars and just be comfortable with being like a regional guy, I compare myself like, oh, there's Dr. Pete, he used to play rugby and he wasn't in the World Cup, but he was a good athlete. He was an attractive guy. His wife thought he was attractive. His kids looked up to him. Like, what's wrong with being a local hero? And I feel like to some extent in the US, we elevate people to such a platform, and there's like one guy, on that stage, when naturally, historically, you grew up in a village and it was like, oh, he's the fastest guy in the town. I'm like, oh, I want to be like him someday. Like, we've robbed people of that regionality of feeling like they're successful. And I think one of the greatest documentaries ever watched was this film on Netflix called, I think it's called That Guy from That Film. They follow these average actors through their careers, and they show that, like, I'm making up the numbers, but 250,000 registered actors, 100 of them are known by the public. I mean, there's a lot of people who have amazing talent who never make it, and they didn't do anything wrong, but you only have 100 spots, and so, but really what those people should be doing is like celebrating their own local town, their skills, which I'm sure are excellent. And I don't know when last time it was you went to a high school play, but they're like Broadway films sometimes. Our local
since high school, it's been a long time.
Yeah, no, right. I mean, but at the same time, I think it's really unfortunate that we've, by nature of being able to record a film and share it with the world through YouTube or through cinema, that we've eliminated this local celebration of talent. And I think it does play into people's feelings of success. And it's feeding the machine. I also think too, it's slightly exploitive too. But anyway, the reason I bring this all up is to say that the Athos diet, I think in certain parameters could be used for athletes of all shapes and forms, but it really is a diet for the 21st century citizen who's just trying to be there for their kids, their grandkids, increase their longevity, increase their function, and just feel better. I don't know if it's going to put you on the moon in terms of physiological success per se, but it definitely is going to lean you down, keep you in this world longer, and get you off all your medications, which I think in terms of like daily reality is the goal.
Yeah. I mean, I bet when, like, with all the people that you get to see in an emergency room, if you mention this and they're like, it's like, wait, I have to give up meat. And those same people are the same people that if they go and make food at home or go out to eat, they're like, I'll have two sides of potatoes. I won't get the vegetable. Like, like they're that person. They're opposed to actually eating vegetables. That's like starch and meat, which is like, I would say is such like the huge piece of the problem is we become so used to like eat like easy, right? Like a steak is easy. Ground meat is easy. Grilling a chicken. But if I got to cut up a salad, I got to cut up a tomatoes, I got to cut all of this stuff. It's like, it's a job for people. And I think a lot of people like the phones and like making videos, like we just said, like when it takes effort, it pushes people away because they're so used to just having instant access to whatever they want, and including food.
Sure.
So
sure. There is some instant gratification there. And it's also, again, in our society through subsidies and many other factors, the cheapest food out there is usually the most calorie dense, the most processed. But I mean, there is kind of a business case, and I explore this in the book a little bit, where, why is it that a pint of blueberries is like, so expensive relative to a pound of beef. If people even cook it. I mean, I thought what was so interesting with COVID is that people actually had, because restaurants were closed, but, people had to start cooking food again. But a lot of people eat out and they eat fast food, and they go out, and those places design food in such a way through salt and fat and carbs, et cetera, that, it's very addictive. I mean, if you try to eat Greek yogurt, which is a healthy option, just pure, nothing added onto it. I mean, you can't get to the bottom. But if you load on, your favorite nuts, honey, sugar, whatever, I mean, you can just house down that thing like it's nothing. Yeah. And so it's the combination of ingredients and macronutrients that makes things very addictive. I only bring that up to say that, it's part of this diet. And I think part of like the paleo diet, carnivore diet, Michaela Peterson talking about her lion diet. A lot of these things are just harm reduction, like elimination diets. I will say, as I see these debates between carnivore and vegan and then everything in between, a lot of it is just 50% of the battle is just getting rid of processed foods. Like if you can just agree not to eat all that, processed crap, you're kind of already on the path to healing. But then the next leap is more refined and more sophisticated, and that's where the weeds get a little thicker. But for me in the Athos diet, I mean, people are on it for 48 days and it's all plant-based protein, but then I encourage them to basically seasonally and cyclically throughout the year, bring that into their daily life, as I do, which is about 180 days a year.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, so Dr. Pete, where's the best place for people to find out more?
Yeah. I had this great opportunity to make a little trailer about what the Athos diet is. It's online, but you can go online at www.theathosdiet.com, theathosdiet.com, and there's a great website there with podcast interviews. There's a blog on there, and there's a trailer. It's like 4 minutes long that kind of summarizes in a very heartfelt way some of the action that we're doing and the philosophy behind the Athos diet. It's pretty, I think it's pretty powerful.
Cool. Well, thank you so much. This has been a blast. Everybody, make sure you stick around, head over to the website, head over to lifestylelocker.com, and you're going to get all the details in the show notes, and you're going to catch the next segment with Dr. Pete. Thank you for tuning into this episode of the Human Powered Life podcast. Make sure to head over to lifestylelocker.com to check out all the details on the show and to watch part 2 of this episode, which is only in video format. We also have this audio portion in video format if you want. Once again, I'm your host, Dr. Josh Hant, for the Human Powered Life podcast, and I'm looking forward to staying connected with you as a Human Powered Life hero. Remember to join the tribe, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.